Now, as we approach the release of Star Wars Episode 9, which is actually less than 3 months away at this point, people are beginning to speculate or predict just how successful this movie will or won't be, or how much money it'll make at the box office, with the early estimates I've seen from amateurs and professionals alike being pretty much all over the board, but leaning more towards conservative or lower estimates, relatively speaking, of course. And this doubt in the surefire massive success of Episode 9 has once again triggered the debate, with a few articles popping up in the last couple days about what exactly is wrong with Star Wars, or why isn't it pulling in the numbers Disney no doubt thought it would when they purchased Lucasfilm roughly 7 years ago. And yeah, I know there are some fans who still want to claim everything is fine and that anyone who questions the health of the franchise is anything from delusional to purposely being negative for the sake of being negative, I guess. However, even Bob Iger, the Emperor or CEO of Disney, doesn't share your optimistic appraisal of the situation. Not only did he call for a Star Wars slowdown last year after Solo was a relative failure at the box office, but in a recent interview he said, "I just think we might have put too much in the marketplace too fast," and he's of course referring to Star Wars. And though a part of me can certainly appreciate on some level a Star Wars fan who will love it no matter what and wants to remain ever optimistic or positive, even if I think praise or rewarding failure or mediocrity just for the sake of wanting to remain positive or not be hurtful on any level can be both detrimental and confusing to whoever or whatever you're praising, when valid constructive criticism would be far more useful to them in the long run, even if it stings a little bit in the moment. Anyway, even though I can understand the mindset of a fan who just wants to keep loving Star Wars no matter what, hell, I want to keep loving it no matter what too. And I also do understand some fans are legitimately 100% happy with what it currently is. It still frightens me to hear the CEO of Disney miss the mark so badly when addressing the current problems with the franchise that, like it or not, are there and are being acknowledged by him, but are being misdiagnosed. Because flat out, it has nothing to do with quantity and everything to do with quality and the level of and sheer amount of competition out there compared to what Star Wars has faced in the past. Not to mention, the whole playing field has changed over time, thanks in no small part to what Star Wars itself has done or accomplished in the past, setting up this idea long before it became as popular as it is today, that a film could have multiple sequels that were all part of a much larger, continuing story that all but required the audience to have seen those previous parts to be able to fully enjoy or have an understanding of the latest movie. And so now we live in the age of serialized entertainment, or movies and shows that present us with one long ongoing story for the whole duration of their existence, and they unapologetically put the onus of understanding what's currently happening in their show or movies squarely on the shoulders of the viewer. For example, if you jump into a popular show in season 2 or 3 or maybe even later, and you watch the latest episode, don't expect the show to go out of its way to explain to you anything that's happened before. You either figure it out as you go along, or you go back and watch the previous seasons and all the episodes you missed, period. And so maybe one of the greatest ironies around Star Wars today is that, again, it's the franchise that in many ways helped open the door for the change or shift away from most everything being more standalone in nature to everything always needing to be interconnected or part of one larger shared universe. Yet in the newest trilogy, or sequel trilogy, it didn't fully embrace the concept it helped make popular in the first place. Instead of feeling like a true sequel or a continuation of the much larger story we had gotten in the first 6 parts, it feels more like a soft reboot or retelling of a story we'd already gotten. And look, I do get or see many of the dilemmas or difficult decisions Disney and Lucasfilm faced with this new trilogy, that at the time of purchasing it, Star Wars was roughly 35 years old and had different fans from different generations. Not to mention they wanted to allow new, mostly younger fans to be able to get into the franchise with relative ease. And really, there was nothing they could have done with Episode 7 to make absolutely everyone happy. And so again, at the time, I guess what seemed like the safest route for them to take was making Episode 7 an homage to the old while focusing primarily on the new characters. That's likely what they thought would make the most people happy and disappoint the least amount of people. Problem is, when people love something, they want it built upon, not reinvented. And if you can keep building on something in an interesting way, you're not going to lose people's attention, no matter how long you keep it running or how often you give them a new part. They're not going to grow tired of your product, but the more you try to reinvent it and give them something inferior to the original, the more you'll lose people, and quickly too. The perfect example of this just might be World of Warcraft, a game that, much like Star Wars did with the film industry, changed everything when it came out, and set a new standard for what a game, or at least an MMO, could be. But as the years have gone by, Blizzard, the company that makes the game, lost touch with its fan base or its player base and stopped listening to its customers and instead insisted they knew better or knew what the players wanted and have radically changed the game to the point where it's unrecognizable compared to what it once was. All the while, their subscription numbers plummeted until finally they just recently released Classic WoW, or the original version of the game. And I've even been tempted to make a video comparing Lucasfilm to Blizzard or WoW to Star Wars. If that's something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments below. Anyway, getting back to it, I don't really know how you can seriously make the claim that people are just getting tired of Star Wars after 4 movies, not when people are happy to jump aboard and follow stories for the long haul everywhere else, just as long as those stories are good. In fact, for a lot of people I know, following their shows, as they call them, has become a hobby unto itself. I have friends, multiple friends as a matter of fact, who will take off from work when a new season of their favorite show is released on Netflix or whatever streaming service it might be, just to sit home all day and binge watch the whole season. You then have shows like Game of Thrones that went on for 8 seasons, and when a new season started, countless people across the world would sit down each and every week for 10 straight weeks and watch an hour-long episode. And one of the biggest complaints when the show did end was it ended too quickly, and that the last season felt rushed, and that the story should have been drawn out a couple more seasons. Then there's of course the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or MCU, which has been going strong now for over 11 years and has released 23 movies in that time. And not only that, but the 22nd movie to come out, which was of course Avengers Endgame, is the highest grossing movie of all time. So to say that Star Wars, arguably the most popular film franchise in history, or at least it once was, would be wearing people out after 4 movies to come out in 4 subsequent years is utterly ridiculous. People tend not to get tired of something when it's good. It's really that simple. I mean, have you ever heard anyone say that a certain movie franchise has been great, they've enjoyed all the films, or that a certain television show has been fantastic with no bad episodes, and then in the next breath they say, well, I hope the show ends soon because I'm getting tired of it? Or do they instead just say that they can't wait for the next movie or next episode to come out already? However, when something starts to slip, people will abandon it in droves in a hurry and find something else to watch. There are endless other options out there thanks to the rise of streaming services, which in turn have also caused cable channels to up their game, especially pay stations like HBO and Showtime. And in both cases, these streaming services and pay channels are producing near movie quality content that lasts for weeks on end, or many hours if you just want to binge watch it, and that costs you one flat rate each month and can be viewed right from the comfort of your own home. Luckily for Star Wars, or should I say Disney, who purchased Lucasfilm mainly for Star Wars, this franchise came with a built-in fan base, one that, right or wrong, does have a lot of very forgiving fans who, as mentioned before, are going to love it and support it almost no matter what, or at the very least give you a lot of second chances. Though it also does have a lot of fans on the opposite end of that yes, are going to be very critical of pretty much anything and everything. And it's a shame that some of these two very different types of fans can't see that, believe it or not, they're actually coming at Star Wars from the same initial place or position, that they both have a profound sense of love for it. Anyway, for a moment, let's just strip away that fan base that Disney inherited when they bought Lucasfilm and ask this question. How successful do you think the new Star Wars movies would be right now if they weren't called Star Wars, or again, didn't have that fan base already in place? What would people think of these movies if they were something new? Something that was essentially just a new sci-fi franchise altogether. And do remember that once upon a time back in 1977, Star Wars was something that no one had ever heard of. It didn't have a built-in audience to guarantee at least some level of success like these new movies have had. It had to stand completely on its own merits. And so, again, I ask, as honestly and as fairly as you can, tell me if you think these movies in isolation are good or if they're not good, if these stories can and do hold their own. And I will point out or ask you to keep in mind that one of the complaints against the sequel trilogy is a misuse of characters you already know and care about. So, if one of the biggest complaints about The Last Jedi is Luke, for example, because you fully believe he'd never be like that, how do you think you'd view that movie if you didn't know the first thing about Luke Skywalker, if he had been a brand new character to you? And kind of keeping that mindset that Star Wars was something new, would you see it as a failure that it couldn't support a schedule of one movie a year, like apparently Star Wars with all its history can't support? Do you think this franchise would just be scrapped if, again, not for its name and history? Because if one 2.5-hour movie every year is too much, I'm not sure how your standard show or TV series or Netflix show nowadays can ask you to watch a whole season, a season that's going to be anywhere from 8 to 22 episodes long, which is quite the time commitment when each one isn't usually about an hour long each. And granted, going to a movie, the travel and other expenses associated with it can be a headache when compared to just staying at home and watching something, but is one movie really too much every year? In closing here, I look at the hype around Avengers Endgame before it came out, when we were 22 movies deep into the MCU, when people really could have been getting tired of this already. Yet, I don't know that I've ever seen people more excited for a movie on the whole than they were for that one. And there's no reason, given its history, had it been fully embraced mind you, that Star Wars Episode 9 couldn't have had the same or similar level of hype right now if the previous two movies in the trilogy had been different. But sadly, when I hear the early box office predictions for this movie, a lot of people think it'll struggle to make even half of what Endgame did worldwide. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to answer any or all of those questions I just posed to you at the end of the video here. Or if you want to see me do a Warcraft vs Star Wars video, let me know in the comments below. Whatever the case may be, do leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.